Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. So let's just address the elephant in the room. I tried to cut my fringe. Okay, I trimmed my fringe, but I think I did it too short. So it's not really the vibe right now, but it's fine because we're in the depths of lockdown and no one's seeing us. Apart from the fact that I'm putting a video on YouTube. Okay, so in today's video, I am going to be talking about secondary readings at university level or even at A level, even if you are at that position, and talking about how best to read secondary readings and how to make the most of secondary readings. So there's quite a lot of information in here, so buckle up, get some popcorn, grab yourself a coffee, and let's get on. Just as a PSA, before I begin this, as I always say with any of my university videos, I study English literature and drama at the University of Birmingham, so what I'm going to be talking about is going to be very humanities based. It is going to be based on my experience studying English literature and drama. So someone who is maybe studying maths, it may not necessarily be as useful to you, but I'm going to try my best. But I really hope that if you do study humanities, this is probably going to be useful to you. Okay, so the first question I guess probably is, what are secondary readings and what do they mean? Very simply put, texts or pieces of work that complement another piece of academic writing or text that you're all talking about. So say for example, you are writing an essay about poems from this book called The Poetry of the First World War, an anthology, and you need backup criticism like from an academic to help establish what you're talking about and to give you a new line of thinking or to help establish a particular point that you're trying to do. And so maybe you'd consult a work like this. This is called The Great War Myth and Memory by Dan Todman. He's actually a historian, but he's also an academic. So this is more of a historical analysis. And this kind of resource is going to give you some great insight into some of the poems in here. So I hope that kind of clears up what secondary reading is. Secondary readings are used extensively in higher academia. So if you're doing A levels, that's when you might begin to start to consult secondary readings, whether that's from a contextual point of view, getting direct quotations or getting direct phrases from people, from laws, from whatever it might be, that does count as secondary readings. I'm going to be talking about mainly how to read secondary readings on kind of a weekly basis. So often I would say maybe you're given like 1 to 2 secondary readings to read. For me, that's about normal, and I would say that my secondary readings, now being in 3rd year, can be anything between 15 to 30 pages long. In 1st year, you will definitely be given a lot shorter. I remember the first ever secondary reading piece I read was called like Risk Taking in Drama, and it was honestly about 7 pages long, and I remember reading it twice and being like, is that it? Eating my words now. So things that I'm saying in this video can kind of be repeated or extended on my last video, which is how to take notes in lectures. So if you haven't watched that, I'm going to put a key card up here, so please make sure you watch that if you're at university. One of the best things to do about secondary readings, and this is kind of my first tip, is to practice. It is not going to come easy to you reading critical readings because sometimes people use long words and they say things in a very conflated fashion, and it's just like, you could have said that in like 2 sentences and you took 3 pages. Another thing I would say is that critical readings are going to take you longer than reading a fictional book. You're not necessarily meant to sweep through them really quickly and, you know, let them just kind of sit on the top of your head. They are meant to embed themselves in your thinking and really challenge you. The more you read about one subject or one topic, the easier it's going to be to read about the same thing in a different secondary reading. So for example, I'm really into disability studies, and I've done a lot of disability studies reading since 1st year. And in 1st year, when I started, one article would take me hours. And now, because I know quite a lot of the linguistics, I've read a lot of the seminal pieces, I know the theorists, I know the examples, that getting through our other articles and other secondary readings is a lot easier for me. One of the best ways to practice if you are really starting is at the front of some books you get a mini essay or a mini kind of preface. So my next tip is find out what medium works best for you. Do you find it easier to print out the essay and highlight it and make notes on the side? Do you find it easier writing out notes yourself on a piece of paper? Do you use an iPad? Do you use a computer? For me personally, on a week-to-week basis, I write out my notes. I've already shown this particular notebook in my previous video on how to take notes in lectures. So on here, if you can see it, I've written the essay title, and then I've written the chapter, and then I write out the page number, particular quotes that I think are really useful, particular quotes, and then I write out another chapter that I find useful, and I just do exactly the same. My third tip for you is to don't attempt to write down or take down notes of every single thing in the essay. Just like lectures, don't do it. It's not going to work, it's not going to happen, it's not going to be useful for you. I know I tried to do this in first year because I thought the whole essay was useful. One thing I would say is that academics repeat themselves all the time. So are they saying the same thing in 3 different ways? Yeah, a lot of the time they are. Cut 2 of them out, you only need 1. Get the key bit that they are talking about. And if you need to contextualize it a little bit, maybe just write some notes around it, or, you know, just give a brief kind of sentence at the beginning to make sure that you actually understand where this quote comes into context, because you don't want to be misquoting them, but at the same time, don't be noting down everything. It's not needed, it's not necessary. My next tip is to be critical. These readings are meant to divide people. The things that you're reading are one person's opinion. So you do not have to take what one person is saying as the correct answer. So if you read a particular text and you think, I do not agree with them, great, that is such a good place to be. Find the quotations that you really don't agree with and argue against them. And it shows that you're elevating your academic knowledge and your academic understanding to a whole new level. Let me say this now. At school, you are spoon-fed information, and you're told that every information that you are given is the right information and that you should agree with it, right? At university level, and starting at A levels as well, that is not the same thing. So you could have a whole lecture from a teacher and not agree with a single thing that they are saying. And that is great, that is good, that is showing your academic understanding. Having said that, don't hate everything, because there are some really good critical readings. So my next tip is to pay particular attention to the introduction and conclusion. If a piece is written well, then your introduction should introduce the points and give a good overarching analysis of what they are going to be talking about. And you should be able to pinpoint exactly the direction the argument is going. And the conclusion is a summary of all the points they have said in a nutshell. So if you have a particular reading that you find really difficult and that you didn't necessarily understand the middle bit, go back to the first and last paragraphs, or the first two and the last 2 paragraphs, and really just look at those ones in particular and see if you can try and understand what they're saying. Kind of going on from that, it is really useful when particular secondary readings have chapters or subheadings within the actual essay. Even if you don't quote anything from that particular subheading, note down the subheading anyway, because it might be that at a later date you go back to that subheading and go, oh, I'm going to have a look back at that. Go back to the reading and you find it more useful. It's also really great to have a look at chapters. So for example, I've picked up The Great War by Dan Hodman again. I did a whole essay this term on mud, and there are 7 different chapters in here. One chapter is labelled mud. So guess how many chapters I read to do my whole essay on mud? I read 1 chapter. You don't have to read the whole book. You can just find a chapter, just find a subheading, and that's okay. So make sure you're using indexes, glossaries, chapters to make sure that you find exactly what you need for essay reading. You don't have to read the whole thing. Once you finish reading your second reading, a really good thing to do is to write down a summary of what you have just read. And these literally need to be 3 bullet points, or like 3 sentences, just key points of what you've read, just to sum up what you've read, so that then at a later date you can go back and go, okay, that's what it was talking about. My final tip and trick is to note down, make note, make reference to anything you do not understand. Is there a particular word that they're using that you don't get? Is there a particular person that they keep referring to that you don't know who it is? And either go off and do your own research, or if there's one thing that you really don't understand, bring it up to your teacher. Send an email off to people. People are willing to help. Okay, that's the end of this video. I hope you found some of it really useful. Just remember that secondary reading doesn't come easy at the start and that it's just practice, practice, practice. I know secondary reading can be difficult, but you will eventually get there. And I hope you have a really good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!